Good morning, Arise Vineyard family. How are you today? How many of you were here last week here? You know, it seems like, is it a sin to have too much fun in church? We had so much fun in just watching that video with the teens out there throwing paint on each other. We're gonna do that after service, so I want all of you to, no, I'm just kidding. We talked last week about being kid-like. And interesting that Jesus said instead of kids becoming more like adults, he turned the tables and he said, for you to enter into the fullness of my kingdom, you need to be like them rather than being like you. And sometimes we leave our childhood behind in premature ways. And I think God's wanting to restore that. And so last week we had all kinds of crazy things happening here with the kids telling us what they think that we ought to know. And the biggest thing that I was left with at the end, if you recall, is that we need to be more flexible. It's like, yes, we do. And that's part of being childlike. And so that was one of the most fun times I've ever had in church in all of my years. And I think it's okay for us to have a good time. So today I want to talk to you about something else. I want to talk about saying yes to God. The adventure of saying yes to God. The ripple effect of what happens when we say yes to God. My entire life is predicated and based upon one thing, not about doing anything right or wrong, but a willing to say yes to God over and over again. Saying yes to God changes everything. Saying no to God changes everything too. But when we say yes to God, it sets a new trajectory in our life. It opens new doors and opportunities. It heals families, heals marriages, and it frees us from the bondages and even the addictions of life. Sometimes we say yes to our sin. We say yes to all the darkness, all the negative things here. But what if we said yes to God? Yes to what we see in His Word. Yes to that small, still voice and wondering if it's God. By the way, if you have that inclination, you think something, feel something, how do you know it's God? Well, the truth is you don't unless you step toward it. Otherwise, it just becomes a fleeting dream and idea. And I wonder if that was God. That's risky business, I think. But when you have that small, still voice of that word comes, maybe it's saying yes to that prophetic word or revelation. It's at the end of the day, it's saying yes to His yes. It's saying yes to His yes. You know, God voted yes on you. Every single one of you. Well, God think, okay, Rick. Okay, yes. And He says yes to you as He has to me. The biggest yes ever, can you guess what it is? The biggest yes ever is when Jesus said yes to the cross, which was His ultimately saying yes to you and to me and our life and our future and our hopes and our dreams, that Jesus dared to say yes to the Father, enduring the scorn, the shame, the suffering, and going to the cross. And our response is to say yes to His offer of life and eternal life and salvation and relationship. It's not about getting our life right. And we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. It's not getting ourselves in order. It's just come as you are and say, God, I don't know, but I'm saying yes to you. And I read this somewhere, and I want to read it to you. But one of the things that what if this church said yes to God? What if we say yes to God right now? What could that mean? What could we do? I think it's unimaginable. And I'm here because I'd like to find that out. What about you? I want to find out about what our yes to God can mean. Someone said, no matter what kind of life you lived, no matter how many wrong choices you've made, have anybody made some bad choices? Yes. 2 of you, 3, 4? You all have. No matter how many wrong choices, the next moment, hear this, the next moment of your life is waiting to give new birth to a new life. If you dare to say yes to what's in front of you and not be focused and taken out by what's behind you. Your life is in front of you, not behind you. Behind you has made you who you are, but there's more than what's been. And we need to put our eyes off of the back and onto the front. And the key that opens every door is our yes to God. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be here at our church today. So I want to talk about it a little bit more, because you know what? When you say yes, and I say yes to God, it not only affects me, but it affects more than me. It can have an unbelievable effect on the people around you, and it makes a difference in your life and the life of others. Here's some examples. Mordecai Ham. I wonder how many of you ever heard of Mordecai Ham. He's like a nobody from nowhere. He was actually turned down for membership in his youth group because he was too worldly. He was an outcast. But one day, Mordecai Ham decided he was going to share the gospel with a young guy named Billy Graham. And Billy Graham became the greatest evangelist in the history of the church, and inviting more people and leading more people to Christ than anyone else has in history. But it started with Mordecai Ham saying yes to this young Billy Graham. And nobody knows about Mordecai, but God knows about him. You have no idea what can happen when you say yes to what God has for you or for someone else. There was a guy named Mr. Raleigh Farnsworth. I don't know him, but Tom Hanks, he was Tom Hanks' drama teacher, and Tom Hanks says he's the reason for everything I've ever been able to accomplish. Well, nobody knows him, but it was his yes to Tom Hanks changed a life. God can take that little less of ours, little yes of ours, and he can turn it into something so much bigger. In Genesis chapter 12, the Lord came to a guy named Abram, later to be called Abraham. And I want to read that to you. The Lord said to Abraham, or Abram, who was minding his own business, very rich guy in the city of Ur, says, leave your native country. Try to put your arms around this one. Your relatives and your father's family, and go to the land I will show you. It's like, really? Who are you? What is this voice in my head? Can you imagine that moment? A voice, speaks to you in some way to leave everything that you have, every security, and leave it all behind. And then he says, and go to a place that I will show you. Didn't even tell you where you're going. Now, is Abram going to say yes to something like that? Normally, I say, well, I need a little bit more information. I need to know where I'm going, what's going to happen, what am I going to do when I get there, how am I going to do with my family that's staying behind this? So how do I do this? But the next part comes, I will make you into a great nation. What? I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others, and you will be a blessing to others. The blessing I'm giving to you and promising to you is not just for you, but it's for others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the families on earth will be blessed through you. All the families on earth would be blessed through you. Jesus is the seed of Abraham and a blessing to every person ever born on this planet. He would have had no idea that this offer to leave what he has and to go in a place that God's going to show him, because he believes that God has a blessing for him. He says, yes. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'm just going to crazy say yes. And so he ventures out, and that's a big deal. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about the guy named Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, that all of a sudden Philip hears his voice and he said, go up to that chariot and by that Ethiopian eunuch and just stand there. Say, and stand there and do what? What do you mean stand there? I'm not going to go over there. It's like, what? Sounds crazy. Yet he did it. He said, yes, okay. And he walks over to the chariot and found that the Ethiopian guy, he's reading from Isaiah and says, Philip says, you understand? He said, I don't understand this. And he ends up explaining it. He ends up giving his life to God and then getting baptized, and all because of a yes by Philip's going up to a chariot. It's those small yeses. It's daring to believe that God is orchestrating your life. And it is for you. But it's always for more than you. The life that we have in God is for us, but it's always more than us. We cannot keep it to ourselves. We cannot, but too often we do. And we all focus on our own stuff. So Abraham had no idea of the ripple effect. He had no idea what was going to come of all this, but he said yes on the front end. You know, in the book of Exodus, that Moses said yes. What a powerful picture, the burning bush, and he's 80 years old, you know, in his prime, right? Somebody should smile, or that's prime of life. When he was 40, you know, he was strong, but when he was 80 and all of a sudden the burning bush is there and his voice comes out of the bush, go to Pharaoh. It's like, you gotta be kidding. There's no way I can't do this. But he said yes. And his yes freed a nation from captivity. Gideon said yes. His yes that freed Israel from the oppression of the Midianites. It wasn't just about him. When he came to Gideon, it's like, wait a minute, I can't do this. You got to be kidding. I'm hiding in the rocks like everybody else, and my family's on the low end, and I'm the low end of my family, so you got to find someone else. It's like, Gideon, I'm asking you. And his yes freed a nation from the oppression. Esther, her yes to God saved Israel, that she stood up to the king and risked her life. This young gal and says, you know, I need to talk to you. Peter walking on the water is one of my favorite yeses. The disciples, you know, went ahead on a boat, and Jesus is late to the show, and he stayed behind, and then he went and, you know, was walking, and it was a little misty out there, and they saw this figure of somebody, and they started saying, it's a ghost. And then Peter, the one, and then the voice out in the water says, it's me, guys, don't worry, chill out. And then Peter does the crazy, I love Peter for a lot of reasons, because he's kind of crazy like me, for one. Puts his foot in his mouth, too. Anybody put your foot in your mouth once in a while? Yeah. Sometimes I put it so far in I can't get it out. So anyway, Peter then says, Lord, if it's you, have me come out on the water. Yeah, right, it's you. Yeah, it's Jesus out here, right. Where's your boat? You know, kind of thing. And next thing he hears is the word come. Come. And then he just flies out of the boat, starts walking. I think the guys, what are you doing, Peter? We don't do water. You know, we're boat people. We're not water people. What are you doing here? And Peter just like, crazy enough, he didn't think it through. He didn't read the manual on how to walk on water. You know, he just like, I'm gone. He said, come, and I'm gone. It's like, are you nuts? And so he does it, and then he ends up sinking because he took his eyes on the wind, and everybody likes to make fun of him for doing that. And then as he's sinking, you know, deeper and deeper, you wonder, when is he going to call out for help? And it says right at the end, it's like he says, Lord, save me. Have you figured this out? When you're in crunch time, your prayers get smaller and simpler. He's sinking, he's drowning, he's going down. And he didn't get this, you know, Lord, I know you are the ruler of heaven and on earth. He said, Lord, save me. That's it. Right here, right now, help. And the Lord grabs him, and then he says, why did you doubt? And I can imagine Peter saying, it's like, could we talk about this in the boat, Jesus? And so then he's back in the boat, he's dripping wet. And then what do you think happened then? You know, at that point, he's feeling a lot of probably different things. But, you know, a lot of people say that they probably say, Peter, what are you doing? You're making us all look bad. You know you can't walk on water. What are you? It's like, well, I did for a little while here. I think their reaction would have been, Peter, what was it like? What was it like to do that? And I don't know about you guys. I'd rather walk on water and sink than spend my whole life on a boat wondering what it's like to be out there. And too many Christians live their life on a boat in the safety, wondering if life could be more, and they never get out of the boat. They choose their comfort and the safety. But Peter wasn't trying to show off. He wasn't trying to prove himself. He got out of that boat for one reason. He heard a voice say, come, that he believed with Jesus. And that's what it took. And that's what opens the door to all of our adventures. You know, for me, everything that's opened up in my life is saying yes to what's in front of me. Some of you know my story. I came from a very broken family, raised by a single mom, no dad. When I was 12, there was a family that saw I was in trouble. I was taking care of my 2 brothers and young sister, and by the time I was 12, my mom was gone, and all the rest of it was a crazy life. And a family came forward. Actually, it was my best friend's family, and invited me to come live with them. Boy, that was a big moment. And you know what? I took it. It was hard to leave my family, but it's like I'm going to say yes. And I said yes to the Millers, but really they said yes to me. And that was in LA. I grew up in Los Angeles, pretty much on the streets of street kid. And then when I was after the Millers, there was a family out in Tehachapi in a 600 acres, 15 miles outside of there. And I'd never been out of the city, the Mannings. And they said yes to me. And then the Johnstons, later on, when the Mannings moved to Florida, they said yes to me. And then the golf pro, I was really into golf at that time, he said yes to me. And I lived with 4 different families who said yes to a young man that was dying and gave me an opportunity at something more. And I said yes to each one of those. And then later on, I ended up saying yes to my brothers when I graduated from college. When they were 13 and 15, my mom basically abandoned my 2 brothers, couldn't handle them, and asked if they could come and be with me. And I'm 23, and I'm all of a sudden, now I got 2 teenagers, and I said yes. And there was a time I thought that was the worst decision of my entire life. Why would I do this? Why would I say yes? Was it out of guilt? So, you know, because my mom always was saying, you need to help more, you need to help more. But I look back on that yes, and that season of 5 years, getting them through high school and all the stuff that went with it. And I was a mess, and they were a mess, but we got through it together. But that was transforming in my life, saying yes to that moment. Then there was a yes to Becky Graves, who's now Becky Olmstead. And that was one of my best yeses, you know. She begged me long enough, and I finally gave in and said, okay. No, not at all true. And then Becky and I said yes to Colorado to go leave our jobs. I was a high school principal and football coach at the high school and pastoring a small Calvary Chapel church. And Becky was a teacher. And we had this sense that God was speaking to us about moving to Colorado and starting a church. And we didn't want to be a pastor or a pastor's wife or any of that stuff. But the risk was, if this is God and we don't step toward it, we're going to regret that. We could regret this the rest of our life. And I didn't want to do that. So we literally quit our jobs, best jobs we ever had, finally making some money, and to give it all up and go start a church in Colorado with no people, no money, no anything. And yet it was a dream come true that God had something so much more. And I thought we could miss this. And then 37 years later, Becky and I stepped out of leading that church. And that was another saying yes to God. And then after that, it was yes to leading the Global 414 movement, that every closed door opened a new door. So it seemed. Then it led us to Mountain Brook as this church was going sideways. And so I was here for a number of years. Then we ended up in Cambria, and we're still kind of closing things off there, saying yes to God. I don't know, I don't understand this, I can't do it. That doesn't work with God. You know that, don't you? I've tried the I'm too old, I've tried I can't do this, I try to want to. None of those things work. It's just like, is it yes or no? That's really how it gets down to. And then now I'm at a rise for one reason. I'm saying yes to God. I think God, in his crazy whatever, has asked me to be here. And so I'm just here. I'm simply here because I want to live with a yes in my heart for God. And everything that's happened in my life is daring to say yes to what I can't do. God never asks you to do what you can do. He asks you to step into what you can't do. the risk of yes is also real. There's a risk to saying yes to God because it's like letting go of what you have for something else. It's like, wait a minute, well, give me the next thing and then I'll let go of this. It's like the trapeze guys that are doing the circus stuff. I love them, but sooner or later, they gotta let go of one bar and they're hanging in space and hoping that that person on the next bar is gonna catch them. But it's that letting go moment that's really not easy. And for some of us, it's letting go of bitterness. It's letting go of old habits and old ways and old things and old memories and all that and moving on. There was a time that I said no to God. Well, I wonder if there's probably more. I could ask Becky on that one. At the beginning of my ministry, I was invited to go to New Zealand. And I was on the ministry team, and I was learning to do, ministry, supernatural, Holy Spirit stuff, and words of knowledge and things like that. And I was on the team, and then at the end of one of our sessions, they were asking us to pray see if we got a word of knowledge. And I'm kind of in the lobby, kind of like spacing out, and all of a sudden I had this flash. And that flash was, I had a name come to mind, Carol, middle age, short blonde hair, cancer of the colon. Because they're doing, it's like, no way could that be God. Somebody's name, those specifics. And at the end of it, they asked people to give those, if you had any words, and I didn't do it. I didn't trust that that's something that specific could be God, and I didn't want to look foolish. Dial ahead to the next day, I was actually teaching a workshop on, guess what? How words of knowledge come and this and that. And I'm just kind of gleefully sharing. Like last night, I had this word and I was trying to say, sometimes we don't know and you get scared and, it's okay and all that. And I said, like I had this word of Carol, short blonde hair, middle age, and cancer of the colon. And I didn't give it. And it's like somebody raised their hand. And it's like, she was here last night. I brought her. And it was the only night that she's going to be at the conference. I was devastated. I denied her an opportunity to be healed by Jesus that night. I'm not saying it didn't happen another night, but God was calling on her because I was too worried about my stinking image and what could happen if I was wrong and it didn't work out and all the rest of it. And it's like, I purposed as a result of that, if I get something, I don't need to do the thus saith the Lord, but it's like sharing what I think might be God and not deprive people of what God wants to do in their life because I'm afraid of being wrong. So I pretty much said, I don't want to say no again. And so it wasn't long after that, I was invited to do a conference in Kansas, Mennonite country. There's Mennonite church, way conservative people. They all dress better than I did. And they wanted a healing conference, and I was available, so they sent me to this couple of hundred Mennonites. And I ended up having the most embarrassing situation that ever happened in my entire life because I decided I'm going for it. So I was teaching throughout, we about 3 days. And the last session, I decided, you know what? I'm going to see if God will give words of knowledge to these Mennonites that have never experienced this before. And so I'm going for it. And I'm just saying yes to this moment. So we prayed, and I told him what was going to happen. I said, words, sometimes you see it and feel it and touch it, and God speaks to you in this ways. And so then I said, okay, who thinks they might have a word of knowledge? And I'm looking around, nobody's raising their hand. And I said, well, that's okay. If we don't have any, but if you do, it's really important that you go for it. So in the back, this gal waves her hand at me. And I said, great, what's up? Says, I got the word hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids, okay? So who's got them? Yeah, I said, who's got the hemorrhoid? And everybody's clamming up here. It's like, and so it's like, no, this gal has taken a step of faith. She's first time ever, and she has a sense that there's someone here that's suffering from hemorrhoids. So if you've got them, it's really important that. So finally, there's a guy, I remember where he was, right over here. right, just like the front row, right where you're sitting, right here. And it's like, so you got the hemorrhoid. All right, here we go. So what I want you to do is I want you to come up front, the person that, because I'd already thought the person that had the word should be the one to pray for the person. So I said, well, I want you to come up here and lay your hands on his hemorrhoids and pray for him. I did. And then this guy's going, no, I'm healed. It's like, what? It's like, and then I'm not done yet. Then I say, I'll help you. At this point, the guy's ready to run outside the room and says, these are Mennonites. The most conservative of the conservative, and then at that point, one of my team members suspected something. I'm not sure Rick knows what hemorrhoids are. So she comes up and she whispers in my ear, and I was like, no. And then at that point, I'm looking for the eject button. It's like, get me out of here right now. It's just like, I'm kind of famous for this in a lot of places. My picture later on was like, I felt like, hey, God's talking to, hey, Gabriel, come here. Rick is going to do a little word of knowledge thing here, and he doesn't know what hemorrhoids are. This should be fun. Let's watch. But something crazy happened. By the end of the meeting, before the guy left, he says, I don't know how to explain this, but I have no pain in my hemorrhoids anymore. Say, oh, come on. There's no way with that foolishness, that childness. And all I did was crazy enough to say, yes, God, I'm not able, but you are. And there's just something powerful about it. And Jesus himself said, just say a simple, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. That's what he said. It's just, it's say yes or not. And maybe you've not said yes, but that can change. I don't care if you said no to God your whole life, over and over again. You've said no to people, no to the future, no to this, no to that. You can say yes today. And a small yes can have a ripple effect to the people around you. Sometimes we get so fixated on the big that we end up doing nothing. Because we wanted a big thing, and so we don't do anything. And it's those baby steps, it's those small steps. It's stepping into the moments that God has set up for us to move in. God has moments for you. Yeah. He's got some moments for you to step into that can be life-changing for you. And it's looking for what God is doing and daring to step into it. Erwin McManus put it this way: we must seize the day, because within each day there are God-given opportunities waiting to unfold. The key is not only to know God's mind, but to know his heart. And that's what I really believe God wants to give Arise, our church. He wants to give us to be a yes church, a yes to his heart, and to give us his heart. And if we dare to bring our yes to the table, there's no limit to what God can do. Now here's some thoughts. Why don't you stand? I want you to reflect for a moment. I've said, what if we said yes? What if you said yes? Here's a question. What has been the ripple effect of your life, of your yes so far? How has your yes affected someone else? Think about that one. Maybe better yet, think about how someone's yes to you has affected you. How has someone's yes become a yes and a changing moment for you? I bet that's happened. Even it's a marriage yes, it's a child yes. Is there something that you think God's asking you to say yes to? Jesus, I ask that you would show us, Lord, is there something that you're saying to us, even now, that we've been afraid of? I think the Lord would say, what would you say yes to if you had no fear of people, of things, results? What if you just dare to say yes? What if you just dare to write a blank check to God? I'm in, and I don't know where I'm going. Lord, what do you want us to say yes to corporately for sure, but individually in our relationships? Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. What would you say yes to if you had no fear? Some of you are in a wrong relationship. Time to say yes to something else. Some of you need to say yes to the relationship you're in. But it starts with saying yes to God. That's all it takes. Yes, God. I surrender my life. All of it. Not some of it. I give him my life. And all that goes with it. And I want what you have for me. Isn't that what you want? Do you want some of it? A little bit of it? Or do you want all of it? Is there something in that says, God, I want all that you have for me? And I'm saying yes to that, even though I don't know what it means. I'm reminded of the words of Paul when he declares, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You're the God of the possible, Lord. With you, all things are possible, including changing my life, protecting my life. Let me ask you a question as we close in worship here. How many of you have something that you feel like you need to step into that's come to mind? Just leave your hand up. Just raise your hand. It's a big moment for you. Not all of you have it, but there's something that you feel that's something to say yes to. Lord, I pray for those that had sensed that, Lord, that you will now empower them. You strengthen them as Paul declared that we can do all things through Christ. Lord, give them the strength and the will to do it. Not just to say it, but to do yes. Whatever, Lord, you put before them, God, I ask, God, that you would lead them, give them wisdom, but give them that first step. Sometimes God will only give you the first step, and then you step, and he'll give you the second one. Where is he asking you to step? It's good to reflect because God has so much for your life. He has so much in store for you if you just dare to say, yes, Lord. And when you do that, that yes spills out on people all around you and your kids in the next generation. Let's worship as we reflect.